pray with me? Gracious God, your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Illumine us, O God, to your wisdom. It is your wisdom that we seek. Speak to us through this your vessel, and we will be careful to give you all the glory. May it be so. Amen. I don't know if you all are all lectionary readers, but I'm thinking that just because you're in chapel at Wednesday at 11:30 at the end of the semester, that you know a little something about the Lord's Psalm 23. And you know that we've been reading Psalm 23 for the last 2 weeks in the lectionary. And so this sheep and this shepherd imagery, for some of us, is a little hard for today's context. But there has to be something about its continual appeal through the scriptures. All of the numerous revisions and redactions of the scriptures, we continue to say, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. Shepherds are frequently likened to pastors, but there are many analogous models of spiritual and physical well-being leaders. On yesterday, for example, this city took to the ballot box to determine who will provide leadership as mayor, as members of the city council, township clerks, and other civic roles. These too are shepherds. These are shepherds of physical and spiritual well-being of the community, its residents, and its neighboring counties and township. So shepherds are not relegated to the agrarian culture in the ancient biblical text. Truth be told, like it or not, all of us are shepherds. Shepherds in our homes, our finances, our education, our sororities, our fraternities, our jobs. We are accountable to be faithful stewards of the well-being of that which God has given into our charge. So in my own life, I liken being a shepherd to this story. Some of you who know me know that I lament not having grandchildren. Now, I don't have children, that's not the issue. I lament not having grandchildren. But if you know me, you also know I brag about my epic auntie skills. So not so similarly, I long and lament of having fur babies. But I am a fabulous pet auntie. So when Luna, her humans, Luna is a 90-pound boxer lab mutt. When her humans had to go out of town for a week, she came to stay with Auntie April. Before her stay, though, we had a few get-acquainted play dates at Auntie April's house. We walked, we learned how to stop and sit at street crossings. We learned how to stay inside from the streets so that passersby would not be intimidated by Luna's 90-pound boxer lab mix. We also learned that a gentle nudge on the leash or a harsh tug on the leash are meant to listen to Auntie April. We even learned how to run without the leash and not get lost. But most importantly, for both Luna and I, Luna learned to listen to my voice. So one day on a potty break, I took Luna out the back door instead of going for a walk. Unbeknownst to Luna, there is an anteroom between the inside of the house and the outside. So we enter into the anteroom and Luna stops dead in her tracks. She backs up. The door behind her is now closed. The door in front of her is unlocked, but also closed. The door in front of her is unlocked, but also closed. She backs up and looks at the door behind her. That door is closed. She then looks at me. I look ahead. When I catch her eye, I stand there and look ahead, and then I say to her worried little face, as I put my hand on the door, I will go first, and you follow me. I say it twice. I open the door, she backs up again, and then she sees daylight, and she slowly walks out the door after me. This is my own allegory similar to today's gospel lesson. You see, the gospel according to John is written to a Jewish Christian community in conflict. Who thunk it? Church in conflict. The leaders of the synagogue, the dominant sect referred to in the gospel as the Jews and the Pharisees, were the leaders of this religious community. And this dominant sect, with all of their influencers, were not so interested in the care and the well-being of the community. They were hyper-focused on maintaining dominance in religious thought and social political power. And so this Jesus figure has come on the scene, and he is disrupting the social political homeostasis by empowering the people to be free from the harmful and limiting narratives of scarcity and fear. Somebody say CNN and Fox. The gospel is written by a Jewish Christian to a Jewish Christian religious community who is in search of identity and purpose in the midst of a culture that persisted in muting their voice and their witness to the revelation of God through Jesus Christ. This is possibly why the fourth gospel opens up with, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. And he was in the beginning with God." The evangelist who wrote this gospel is setting the tone that Jesus is not an add-on feature to their faith. No, but that no one and no thing came into being except through the Word that is God and with God from the beginning, and that Word is enfleshed in Jesus Christ. In my own ministry experience, I get the privilege to listen to and participate in conflict mediation. And when something is this clear, when people tell their stories, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, when that story gets that clear, I recognize that's when the fight got started. You see, what we know about the Gospel of John is that this evangelist, this author of this fourth gospel, is laying down the gauntlet, establishing what the fight is really about. The evangelist is writing to an audience in conflict and in oppression. The author's intent is to give hope to those struggling under the oppressive narrative of place and space in the community and in the body of believers. The author is a member of the oppressed community. And so these oppressed members of the community, their narrative has been what David Anderson Hooker describes in the little book of Transforming Community Conferencing is compressed. They are living a compressed narrative. In their compressed narrative and role in the first century Palestine context, their existence is dependent on their value to the 1% or the power elite. In essence, they do not get to define themselves or their destiny. Their power elite do that for them. So in our lesson today in chapter 10 of the gospel, it's couched between a movement, between a series of miracles and dialogue between Jesus and the Jews and the farewell discourse that we have come to know as seminary students. And so Jesus is presenting in the farewell discourse his preparation to his disciples for his leaving this side of heaven, leaving the responsibility, the stewardship of the community in the hands of the disciples. And so we find ourselves here at Christian Theological Seminary in this time and space of the year, in transition between discourse and documentation, from junior year to middler year, from middler year to senior year, from project proposals to dissertations, from student in the classroom to student in the anteroom. The door behind us is closing. The door in front of us is unlocked and waiting to be opened. In our text, Jesus is telling a story, an allegory of sorts, to the newly sighted blind man who, because he was healed by Jesus, was put out of the community. You see, in the setup to this conversation in the previous chapter, Jesus and his disciples met the blind man. And the disciples asked Jesus, who sinned, that the blind man or his parents, that the man is blind? Jesus, noting that neither sinned, but to show his faithful and compassionate power and authority, Jesus spits on the ground, makes a mud salve, rubs the salve on the man's eyes, and instructs him to go and wash in the Sea of Siloam. The blind man follows the instructions, gains his sight, and returns to the community. The Pharisees go out and find the man's parents and interrogate them, but for fear of being excommunicated, the parents send the Pharisees to the blind man. So then they interrogate the blind man twice. Ultimately, these religious leaders put the blind man out of the community. It is the story of our lives: excommunicating, reaffiliating, excommunicating, reaffiliating. The story of excommunicating in our own lives even finds us placing ourselves in this first century context. But here is where Jesus steps in. Jesus finds the man and tells him this allegory we find in chapter 10. This story full of metaphors and pictures of good shepherds and false shepherds, true shepherds and false shepherds. Though this allegory of sheep, gates, gatekeepers, shepherds, Jesus is painting a picture of where, quite possibly, the Jews and the Pharisees, the religious leaders, might have gone wrong, which is the care, safety, physical, and spiritual well-being of the community is their first call. This message of Jesus is empowering to the one group and disturbing and disruptive to the other. But because the Pharisees, like us, didn't get the first set of metaphors about responsible shepherding and leadership, Jesus has to shift to describing their dereliction of duty by the so-called shepherds of the community as thieves and bandits, to describing himself as the gate. Jesus reassures the formerly blind man that even though he has been maltreated by religious leaders, excommunicated by power elite, that the blind man has chosen the better route. I want to encourage us this afternoon that as we bring this semester, this year, this 2022-2023 academic year to a close, all of the confusion, all of the busyness has come to this point. And Jesus encourages the blind man as Jesus encourages us, that we have chosen the better route. That if we put our trust in the one who is a way through, who makes a way for salvation from limited compressed narratives, limited narratives to limit our full flourishing now and in the future. You see, if we see Jesus as the gate today, as he's explaining to the formerly blind man that he is the gate, we allow Jesus to disrupt the compressed narratives in our own minds. We allow Jesus to tell us that we can finish the semester. We can walk across that stage. We can be the next VP of Academic Affairs. We can be an influence in our community. Jesus disrupts the compressed narrative that once blind sinner, always a blind sinner. You see, seminary disrupts everything about who we thought we were when we came in. And it's ours to look to the gate, to look to Jesus as the gate, as the way through, to be reminded that the way through is not the last gate through, that on the other side of the gate is also the reassurance that your narrative, who you thought you were when you came here, that has been disrupted while you were here, will be put together again if we just tune our ear to the one who is the gate and the good shepherd. Jesus reminds us that we can disrupt the narrative of scarcity and fear in our communities, this narrative of scarcity and fear in our minds, the narrative that says CNN and Fox News are not our gospel, And so Jesus catches a blind man in this first century Palestinian context, struggling in community, in the anteroom of faith, and moving forward to remind us to focus on the gate. The door behind us is closing. The door in front of us is unlocked and waiting to be opened. If we focus on the gate, we find the courage to tune our ear to listen to the one who reassures us that doors are opening now that weren't available for those who came before us. And those doors are opening not so we can go from door to door, from anteroom to anteroom. Those doors are opening so that we can be the gate for the community, that we can now be the good shepherd. We have no idea what's on the other side of the door. Like Luna, we're going to pause and step back. But when we look back, the door is closed. The door in front of us is unlocked and waiting to be opened. Jesus invites us, like he invites the blind man in the first century Palestinian context, that even in the midst of transition, that if we focus on the gate, we are strengthened for the journey, for what is beyond in the pasture, that we might be the gate for those who need justice, those who need to tune their ear to the gate, those who need to know that the Lord is their shepherd. They shall not want. There is nothing on the other side of the gate that will not be met with blessed assurance and God's glorious grace and mercy for you and for those whom God has given you charge to give care and spiritual and physical well-being. The Lord is our shepherd, and the Lord has given us the responsibility to be shepherds of a new pasture. Might we experience Christ anew as we transition from this anteroom to the pasture that is before us. May it be so. Amen.